Hello, Russ and the West Ham Network. Hope you're all safe and well. If you're ready, give it a like, give it a comment, give it a share, give it a surprise. A surprise? Give it a subscribe. Give it a surprise, but give it a subscribe would be even better. I'm going to have a bit of a rant, and it's not a rant. It's more of a brain dump. I've been thinking about things over the last couple of days, and I'm a little bit worried about West Ham in terms of what the future holds for the mighty Hammers. And it stemmed from the chat that myself and Anton had on Friday, the Friday night show, which was about the Rice situation. So go and check that out. And then obviously we then had the Brentford game after that, which wasn't great. And it got me thinking. It got me thinking about the summer. And basically, it seems to me that this close season will be a defining period for the club. And that worries me greatly, to be honest. It worries me greatly um, because it's not just one area. There's loads of new directions needed. So you've got, for example, the pitch, the players on the pitch. You've got the dugout. You've got possibly the boardroom as well. Now, one change can be sort of worrying enough, but having multiple changes, multiple significant changes happening at the same time is what scares me and what is a bit worrying, I think. And it's just me getting my thoughts out there. Just getting my thoughts out there in terms of the season ahead, the closed season ahead. Now, I mean, the way I see it, it's almost like a domino effect. Now, I've been through, it's same as a lot of West Ham fans, been through turbulent times at the club. I think back to the times when Golden Sullivan bought the club from the Icelandics, which again was a turbulent time. There was two turbulent times. You had the craziness of the Icelandics, and then the collapse of the economy in Iceland, and then Golden Sullivan taking it over. Things like the appointment of Gianluca Nani, I thought was a strange one, and sort of changed the dynamic of West Ham. Then relegations, the 2002-3 season. You've got the 2011-10 season. Again, sort of seismic changes in West Ham. And we've sort of ridden the waves, so to speak. It sort of has sorted itself out eventually. And then there's another one. There's another cataclysmic. It's a bit like Final Destination in terms of we've just missed out that and then something else happens. But I think this summer, arguably, is the most significant changes combined in our recent history. And I say that very, very, I don't say it lightly at all because I think it really, really is. Now, firstly, there's this whole this director of football idea. And that appointment for that role seems to be in full swing, if you believe what's been written in the papers. We've spoken about a few of the names being touted, with half a dozen names potentially being lined up, each of them themselves having a different direction, their own personal direction in terms of recruitment, personnel, style of football. For example, we've spoken about Roma's Thiago Pinto. He'll have a different direction and also a different pool of players he wants to get than someone like Lee Dykes from Brentford, or Michael Edwards from Liverpool, or Victor Orta from Leeds. All have very, very different perceptions of how football should be played and the types of personnel they need to bring in to match that philosophy. And that's one thing that worries me, because having the idea is great, but then having the forefront and having the financial backing to then go and execute that. And obviously the relationship between the director of football and, our sporting director, Mark Noble, and the board, and the fans, and the manager. There's so many moving parts. It can be like a domino effect if the director, and we hark back to previous sort of partnerships. I look at Gianluca Nani and Zola and the whole thing with Savio. I look at, well, Nani, it was more, it was, I mean, it was under Zola, really. Savio was there. You look at Huselos and Pellegrini. You look at Newman and Moyes; they've come together as packages, and this could potentially be the first time where the director of football is totally away from the manager and reports to the board. So there's a difference in dynamic there as well. How will someone who's potentially been the manager for the last 3 years, or say 4 years really under his 2 stints at the club, react to that? I don't know. So that's the first thing that worries me. The second thing that worries me is the manager. So obviously, director of football is one issue, manager is another issue. Now, whether Moyes stays or whether he goes is up for debate. I think not for debate, but for there's no clear cut definitive answer. We've got conflicting reports as to whether he's going or staying. Clearly, there is a percentage of the percentage of the fan base who want him gone, a percentage who want him to stay. And obviously, it's more lent towards the ones who want him to go than the ones that want him to stay. But then the flip side is, if we do come away with the Europa Conference trophy, what does that mean? What does that mean? I mean, there was a report on Sky Sports, and I know Gio mentioned it the other day, reporting this week that he is staying. He is staying. We've heard previous reports that he's not going. He'll only go if we get relegated. There's other reports saying we would go if he can only stay if he wins the Europa Conference League. So there's loads of conflicting reports, which means there's not one narrative. There's not one narrative, and that narrative could be, I mean, as I said months ago, we had Jim White saying that he was going to stay regardless of what happened, regardless of when we were down. Then there was a caveat that he was going to go if we don't win the Conference League. So again, what happens? You've got the director of football, appointment apparently, which is well underway in terms of interviewing people and asking clubs for permission as well to talk to people in that position or people who would like to be in that position. Then you've got the manager. Now, we've then got Moyes in press conference saying he's staying, he's planning for next season already. However, with that and the constant reports of those, the likes of Fonseca, Potter, Postologlu, Antonio Conte, I heard the other day, Will Steele, Michael Carrick. You could reel off a half a dozen, although not Bielsa now by the sounds of it, because he's got the Uruguay international job. That's been confirmed. So someone's going to be wrong and someone's going to be right. The reports we've heard is he's gone regardless. He's gone in the summer. He's going to retire, or he's going to leave the game and take an extended period until maybe someone needs him, and he firefights in a bit like Big Sam does, or a bit like Roy Hodgson does. That's what we've heard, but we don't know. We don't know, and clearly there's no one knows, because there's so many different sort of different opinions, and that's the thing. We just do not know, and whatever manager who comes in are going to have a different philosophy of playing. They're going to have different playing style. They're going to have different views on recruitment. They're going to have, someone like Graham Potter is going to have a very different perception of recruitment than Paulo Fonseca, for example. The type of football that Postologlu plays is very different from the type of football that Antonio Conte plays. So how can you have a clear direction of where we're going to go in terms of recruitment, in terms of what team we're going to maintain, what team's going to go, and we'll talk about the players in a minute. And then on top of that, you've got the relationship between the manager and the director of football. That's going to be a new relationship which has to build, unless there is already an existing relationship. He says, putting 2 and 2 together between the Roma sporting director or general manager, Thiago Pinto, and Paulo Fonseca. They both played the jumper they worked together at Roma. But that might not be the case. For example, someone like apparently Michael Edwards is very heavily regarded. I've even looked at Paul from Monaco as well, Paul Mitchell from Monaco. So there's loads of possibilities, and it's almost like it's like you've got 2 playing cards and you're just sort of like putting, trying to play snap with them. And that's a massive deal, because that leads through to our third point, which I'm worried about, which is the playing staff. And you see, they're all these things are intertwined. They're all intertwined. Now, the playing staff, the playing squad, the major question, obviously, is what we spoke about already when we started me ranting, was Declan Rice. We've reported interest from Arsenal, Man United, Man City, and Chelsea. Although, as Anton reported, probably not until after the final, if we get there, hopefully. Will there be sort of any further talks? By the sounds of it, no doubt there'll be one or two other clubs entering the bidding war. But his foreseeable future needs to be sorted out almost immediately after the season concludes. If he's sold, you want him sold to the best price. You want him sold to the best bidder. Whether it is as a straight cash offer, you want to get the most cash out of him. If it's a player plus cash deal, you want to get the best overall deal for the club. And that has to happen. That has to happen, in my eyes, as soon as the season finishes, whether it's next Sunday or whether it's hopefully after the 7th of June. Now, obviously, after the 7th of June, the thing is, all of our competitors will have already had this situation. They'll have finished the season like next Sunday, and they'll be a weekend ahead of us already. So it's paramount that whatever the decision's made on all three things, but particularly Declan Rice, needs to be made sharpish as soon as that season finishes, because I can see what's happening. I can see what will happen. We'll have a long, protracted transfer window saga of will he go, who will he go to, how much money, and end up leaving probably the 30th of August for 100 million quid, and then we've got it stuck in the bank until January, which could be far too late by the time we get to spend it. Thinking the clubs that are coming up, the clubs that are reinvesting as well, new managers as well in the Premier League, every year is going to get tougher and tougher in terms of maintaining our Premier League status. And so we need to ensure that the Declan Rice saga is sorted straight away. The status of the manager, the status of the director of football could be contributing factors to Declan Rice staying potentially. If the manager comes in, is someone he's excited to play for, and he can see a very good director of football coming in as well, along with us potentially winning the Conference League and obviously therefore Europa League football next season. It might be enough for one more year for Declan Rice, but then the trouble is his value would dip immensely unless he signed a new contract to protect his value for the club. But would he do that? Who knows? I don't know. We have he has technically a year left plus a year option. So in essence, he has 2 years left in his contract. So if it did run out to the end of next summer, he doesn't sign a new contract, he's in the last year of his contract, which means potentially if in January that summer he could sign a pre-contract agreement with a foreign-based club, with a Real Madrid, and we get nothing for him. So it's a calculated risk. You take the money now, you take the money in the summer, or you don't, and you risk maybe half the money in January, in September, in sort of August, September, the following summer, or fuck all at the end of the summer next year, the year after next. But then again, Declan Rice is one of those people I think who could potentially then sign a new contract to protect, even if it's a 1-year extension, because you have to then add another year on top. So there'd be a 3-year extension contract, or another 2-year extension rather. So would he do that? I don't know. But it's something which needs to be sorted. On top of that, we have got an aging squad. And we know that the manager status will invariably result in players leaving or staying based on whether they like the new manager, whether they like the old manager, whether the old manager will like them again because they come back from injury, Italian internationals, that type of thing. And that makes a massive difference. I mean, would an Arnie Slot, for example, want to keep the likes of Cresswell and Ogbonna rather than getting newer players or potentially promoting from the development squads? We know the likes of Fabianski, we know the likes of Cresswell, Soufal, Lanzini. They're all in the last Ogbonna. They're all in the last few months of their contracts. Apparently, we're having discussions now about extending those contracts. We do have an option on a few of them. Does that mean that Moyes is in? One thing we read was Cresswell would only if Moyes stayed, he would get an extension to his contract. Probably miss out on his testimonial because it would cost 300 odd grand for London Stadium to host that game, because obviously it wouldn't count for our games we have under our contract with them. But that to me is an opportunity to get rid of some players potentially, and be really selective of who you want to in terms of making the squad younger, because it will catch up with us. And if Moyes does stay, he's on his last year of his contract, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Add to that list, potential departures. Declan Rice, we've mentioned. Antonio, we've mentioned. Potentially Ings, Areola, Skamaka, Fornals. Some of them are pissed off and not getting game time. Some don't like the manager. Some don't like the way we're playing. Some just want out the club. Plus that, you've got the injury proneness of someone like Kurt Zuma. So you can see a major shake-up of the squad is required to be able to compete in the Premier League and hopefully in Europe again next season, if obviously we win the Europa Conference League. Yes, we've had squad depth, in terms of numbers, but not necessarily in quality, I think, this year, in my opinion. Yes, it's great that we have two teams who can we can always have a Premier League squad and a Europa Conference League squad. But the flip side is, with injuries, suspensions, the second string, I think some of them have shown they can't cut it when they get brought in. Just don't think they have. And yeah, it might be a lack of confidence. It might be a lack of game time, match freshness, match sharpness, match fitness. But still, they're professional football players, and I think some of them are on the beach and some of them want out. I thought Antonio, for me, it was like halfway through the season when Skamaka was playing and we brought Ings in, particularly when Skamaka was playing. Antonio looked just disinterested, and he wanted to go in January. It didn't work out. We actually brought another striker in, and probably since February, March time, he's been one of the best improved players in the last couple of months for sure. Which again is slightly surprising because I thought he wanted that. Maybe he wants that. Maybe he's playing for a better, for a different contract. I don't know. I do not know. And then there's the transition of the academy players as well. Now that's something we've spoken about quite a lot. We've spoken about at great length about Moyes' maybe his reluctance to establish youth team players into the first team, not give them a chance, because as I said, compared, on paper, he's given 16 academy players their first team debut, which is more than anyone since in the Premier League era for sure, under West Ham. But obviously it's the establishing now into the, like Ben Johnson, who's still on the peripherals, and he'll another player who could go in the summer. And he's made 80 appearances. You could say he's relatively established in the first team squad. And that's the next step for these players, is establishing themselves in the first team squad. So if Moyes remains, the chances of him of them making a serious impact on the first team squad are limited, particularly if he renews the contracts of Cresswell, Ogbonna, etc. Cresswell, that takes up Ollie Scholes' potential to go in. Ogbonna, you've got the likes of Luis Al, you brought in from Sao Paulo. You've got Casey, Lanzini. You've got Fornals. You've got people like George Earthy. Up front, you've got like of Mbama. You've got people like Freddie Potts in the midfield as well. These guys could establish themselves, but you don't unless you give them a chance. That's the truth of the matter. And they might sink or swim, but you haven't given them the chance at all. Under Moyes, I don't think that happens consistently. It might happen the odd Carabao Cup game, the odd dead rubber for the Europa League, if we get through, God forbid, but not consistently. I think actually only one of them 16 players was a Premier League debut, and that was, I think, Ngakia against Liverpool, which was a hell of a baptism of fire, but he rose to the challenge. Although I did think that was, you could get a better deal at Watford. Now, if that happens, and Moyes stays, as I said, he's going to be entering the last year of his contract. So next season. So unless he signs a new one, is he going to be bothered trying to develop academy players into the first team to benefit the next manager that takes over? So for me, if he stays, he has to sign a new contract, because actually then you can see that he's got a job for the next 2-3 years, and he'll want to develop the squad for the next 2-3 years. he's one of the longest serving managers in the Premier League at the moment, which is ridiculous, as well as being, well, technically the third oldest. Well, although, if next year, he will be the oldest because Roy won't stay on. Big Sam will be relegated with Leeds, and so he won't stay on. So he will be the oldest Premier League manager in the current division. If he's only on a 1-year contract, is he going to be playing players who maybe are 18 months, 2 years, like the transition, like the pathway players, the under 18s, they maybe not be ready properly or properly established for the next 3-4 years in reality, if they're at 17, 18. So it's something to bear in mind. Now, I know I'm trying to not sound too, me, I'm a positive man. I'm not trying to sound too Debbie Downer, doom and gloom, particularly as you're about to play in our second, European semi-final second leg in as many years. But so much rests this summer, and I haven't even spoken about the ownership of the club, with obviously passing a DG, sad passing earlier this year. Sully's getting older. Danny Kudrinski's intentions, we don't know fully about what we want to do. Plus, you've got the stadium ownership as well. It feels like we're on a bit of a tightrope at the moment, in all honesty. And yeah, we could get to the other side. No problem at all. But it feels wobbly. And it could easily fall off if we don't make the right calls at the right time. Too often we've been forced into making late decisions, which invariably are the wrong decisions because they've been panic buys or panic decisions. So I look back at, maybe the signing of Danny Ings in retrospect. As a signing was a good signing, but in retrospect, in terms of how Moyes plays, it's a bit of a waste. I'd rather maybe have spent that money on someone like Becker from Union Berlin, who's fast, quick, can play up front, or Boulaye Dia from Villarreal. These types of players, rather than Danny. Danny's a proven goal scorer. He scores goals wherever he goes, but doesn't play well on his own. We were rushed into that decision. And I'm worried because these three decisions are critical in terms of the not the short term, but short and long term future of West Ham, and they need to be made as soon as the season finishes, whether it be next Sunday or whether it be hopefully after the 7th of June. Anyway, rant over, people. Enjoy the rest of your day. 20 minutes of me ranting over your cornflakes. That's it. You are going to be, and it's not doom and gloom. As I said, there's lots of opportunities. It's exciting, that you can take it the other way. So actually, it's exciting that all this could change, because actually, for a lot of people, they don't like the way things have been run in terms of the football club, in terms of the team, in terms of the personnel, and there's an opportunity to move and change things. So it is exciting. But it's just to caveat that, just to be cautious, and we just need to make the right decisions. That's all we got to do. Anyway, if you're new ended, you like it, come and give a share. Let me know in the comments, please. I think this will get a lot of people chatting, and I hope it will do, because that's the whole point of what we do on this channel, is to get your opinions and back and forth. And we're all West Ham fans, but we've all got different opinions and come from different sides of the argument and different sides of the bridge, so to speak. So anyway, we'll have all the stuff coming up, Hammers headlines. That'll be up later on. The press conference for the game will be out this evening, probably. We just confirm what time. And that's it. Take care. Stay safe. Stay warm. Stay humble. Bye.